Edgar Cayce. Symbols and the Self. By Violet Shelley. Part 3a. Aura Charts as Records. Edgar Cayce's Aura Chart. Symbols and the Self. Contents. Symbols, signposts to insight. Symbols as key. Aura charts as records. Life seals as reminders. The symbol-minded self. 3a. Aura charts as records. Edgar Cayce's Aura Chart. Esther Wynn painted the Aura chart on the left. Ingo Swann painted the Aura chart on the right. The legacy of readings left by Edgar Cayce is a treasure. Both because the philosophy contained therein is a practical one and because the explanations of the scriptures appeal to the rational mind as well as to the striving spirit of man. By explaining its symbolism, the Cayce readings made the Bible a living book for many people, yet assured them that the symbolical interpretation does not oppose the historical. Over and over, man was admonished to learn his lessons in the earth, to overcome the physical, material desires, and to recognize the reality of himself as a son of God who must ultimately return to his Father's house. There is a rich load of symbolism in Edgar Cayce's Aura chart readings. The life readings gave descriptions of past experiences in the earth and planetary sojourns which were affecting the present life. The Aura chart readings suggested putting in picture form various important incarnations. The charts utilized the three kinds of symbolism: conventional, personal, and universal. Meant to be more than attractive decorations, they were to keep before the entity in visual form a reminder of the lessons he needed to learn. It was implicit that pictures and symbols would impress the conscious and unconscious minds more quickly than words. The reason for aura charts is often stated, as in this example. In giving an aura chart, this we would indicate as to the high points in the experiences of the entity in the earth, having to do with the manner in which the entity has conducted or is conducting itself in the present for the greater unfoldment, spiritually, mentally, and materially. One should not be stressed more than the other. And these characters or symbols may indicate for the entity the manner in which the conduct, in relationships to creative forces, which is the purpose of the entity's experience in the earth, has been applied by self. The picturizations are attainments, the symbols of the universal consciousness or astrological aspects are the manners. And the symbols about same indicate that portion of the body represented in same, signifying the manner or stress put by the entity. For instance, Aries indicates the mind, or use of the head, while Libra indicates the balance kept in body, mind and purpose in such an experience. The aura charts were intended to recall past experiences in the earth and to remind an individual of the lessons he must learn. They were also to hold before the person a symbol of his possible attainments and his eventual realization of his true relationship with his source. In looking at these readings, one sees over and over that the crown of glory, the cornucopia overflowing with fruits of the Spirit, is available to any and all who choose to follow the way of the cross, the Christ. The aura chart readings were preceded by a reading in which an interpretation was asked of an archetype, painted for Mr. Cayce by Nancy Lansdale in New York. This was reading 294-204. In it, what the artist had called an archetype was referred to as an artist's concept of the aura about an individual entity. It emphasized that this particular rendition was largely her own interpretation of Mr. Cayce's aura. The picture did not represent any particular incarnation, but rather the whole glory of purpose in the individual entity, and the radiation, or the spiritual aura of an individual entity, symbolizing not only the individual life but that influence directing the individual life. then the whole of the archetype is very well expressed. Yet do not understand that the activity of the individual entity has been or is as symmetrical as expressed here. It is rather the beauty of same that is expressed by the artist than the individual entity, for the entity has not been very much of the artist in patterning his life to those things even expressed. This might be interpreted in the way and manner of a spiritual truth, that the way of the cross, though to the material-minded may be severe, brings beauty, even in the life of the unrighteous, if it is set as a part of the purpose of the entity. As is indicated in the whole of the drawing, or archetype, and that it may bring life, light and hope to others, even though the life itself may be a hardship to the individual, if it is looked upon only from the material angle. This was on August 24, 1945. Intrigued by the archetypes and the explanatory readings, the people around Cayce at Virginia Beach began to request archetypal readings for themselves. Within the month, the following request was made for one of these individuals. Mrs. Cayce, you will give in detail the symbols, colors, and the stages in the development as signified in a complete spiritual aura of the entity 288, present in this room, so that it may be depicted in a drawing to be used as a helpful influence. After the suggestion, the records show that Mr. Cayce said in an undertone, you will give an aura chart of the entity 288, indicating the symbols, colors, and the meaning of each, that they may be made into a drawing that would be of help to the entity. This was the first appearance of the term aura chart, which was thereafter used. Although not a precise term, it was better than archetype. The aura chart for Edgar Cayce. 16 more aura chart readings intervened before one was given for Edgar Cayce. The artist's concept of this chart was drawn in pastels and is reproduced here. The first portion of the reading is the suggestion by Mrs. Cayce. Mr. Cayce's answering statement repeats the request, reworded in his trance state. You will have before you the entity Edgar Cayce, born March 18, 1877, in Christian County, near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. You will give an aura chart of the entity, indicating the symbols, colors, and the meaning of each, that they may be made into a drawing that would be of help to the entity. Yes. In giving the signs, the symbols, as may indicate activities which may be picturized into an aura chart, much depends upon the concept of the artist in making such a drawing a thing of beauty, or a helpful experience for an entity. In giving the interpretations of same, the influences or activities during the period of the experience of such an entity may be indicated the better, possibly, in picturizations of a place, while the manners in which such an activity was applied may be given in the signs or symbols to which the entity was attracted from such an activity in that particular sphere of consciousness. Here we are told that the locale of an incarnation is best shown by a picture suggesting the place. Mental urges and consciousness attained in a life are shown in signs and symbols. These utilize the meanings of numbers and the astrological signs of the planets. The readings directed that the pictures in the aura charts be started at the bottom. Therefore, the lowest picture indicates the first of the presently influencing incarnations. The charts usually read from left to right, with the astrological signs on the left indicating the plane of consciousness from which the entity came into the earth. The middle picture calling to mind the locale of the incarnation into which he brought those influences, and the astrological signs on the right indicating the state of consciousness achieved through that particular life. The first life shown on Mr. Cayce's aura chart depicts the earliest one possible. Then, for this entity, we would begin first by picturizing that to illustrate the period when the morning stars sang together, and the sons of God came together announcing the advent of man into material consciousness. thus across the lower portion, extending almost the whole width of the design. Begin in the right-hand side by putting the crescent, with the 7 stars. The one closer to the crescent the brighter. These, the stars, would be 5-pointed, in gold, and in silver. This portion of such a drawing should be rather with the background the blue canopy of the heaven, dark, while toward the left side would come the shading to that of light, lighter, lightest, with just the very tip of the sun arising, over the expanse as of water, with heavy vegetation and growth. The animals all would be indicated as in a state of expectancy toward the light, or the sun, from the serpent to the fowls of the air, indicating especially the raven and the doves in the fowls of the air, and the serpent upon one of the trees or shrubs indicated, and the ox, the camel. These especially would be indicated in such a drawing. Upon the left, in the lower portion, put the symbol of the sun. Upon the right put the symbol of the earth. Each of these would be in white and green. Even the sun would be in the light green with the white and gold center. On the left of this picture of creation is the symbol of the sun, which stands for the creative source, and on the right the symbol of the earth. This depicts the soul incarnating in the earth, and the attainment shown on the right shows that material consciousness was built. If all of an individual's incarnations could be shown on any chart, we might discern a definite step-by-step involvement with and evolvement from influences. However, the aura charts give only the most influential of the incarnations, and intervening lives are omitted. We must be satisfied to see in the symbols the indication of the plane of consciousness from which the entity entered into the earth. These indicate urges and influences which he brought with him. Carl Jung's work has suggested that the language of the unconscious mind is the language of symbols, and in these charts we see pictures and symbols used to impress the unconscious mind. The first vignette in Edgar Cayce's chart shows a crescent and 7 stars, stars with 5 points. The crescent alone represents the moon, the feminine, the unconscious, but used with a star it is symbolic of paradise. The number 7 means perfection of spirit, and the 5-pointed star is the star of man. So the symbol of the crescent with 7 5-pointed stars is an accurate symbolic representation of the paradise which man chose to leave for the material plane. The next picture indicates an incarnation at a much later time. Above this indicate a mountain, and the symbol or sign that is the symbol of Gemini, or the two-bodied figure, or united bodies as a figure, small, on the edge of this mountain. The vegetation here would be very verdant, in the central portion, this shading off to the left in that as of the temple, or the crystal, or an obelisk with the crystal in the top. This, to be sure, would not be too large a figure, with many figures at worship about the light that comes from this obelisk. On the right side would be the fields with laborers in chains or bonds. This, to be sure, would indicate the period in Atlantis when there was the separation of the sexes indicated among things, or the thought figures or thought bodies. Those that had caught the vision and those still kept in bondage. Upon the left put the symbol of Mercury, this in gold and green. About same would be the sign or symbol of Aries, or the ram, for in number, small, and black. Upon the right side put the symbol of Jupiter, in purple and coral, while about same would be 4 symbols of Scorpio. These indicate the place, the activities, and the manner in which these were applied in the experience. Mercury is the planet of the mind and mental vision. In combination with Aries, which means leadership, it would imply that the entity brought into the earth with him the ability to be a brilliant leader. The vignette in the center indicates that this was the Atlantean incarnation, and from the life reading of Edgar Cayce we can infer that this time he used the astrological urges wisely. The state of consciousness attained is indicated on the right side of the chart, being represented by the symbol for Jupiter with 4 signs of Scorpio. Jupiter implies universality of thinking and concern with the affairs of men, while Scorpio in its high aspect implies great spirituality. 4 represents the earth. Above this, extending almost across the whole of the drawing, which should be in vignette, and not encircled as the first, indicate, in the left, the trek of a group or body of people, with a leader, with a staff in hand leading peoples, with a few beasts of burden, as the ass, the camel, and also elephants, but few in number of each of these, rather distributed through the group and not as the mere leaders or in the front of the caravan. Then the pyramid would be indicated in the central portion, in sand, with the top not complete, for over this would be the light as of a flame. In the right portion put the facade of the Temple of Sacrifice, indicating within at least 3 crude rock-built altars. Upon same would be the fires builded, but not a sacrifice on any of these. Also a little farther to the right of this figure would be the Temple Beautiful. And upon the columns would be the stars, 7, indicated by a facade of many columns, the central bearing the larger star, the higher in color as well as in size. And the entrance to same would be indicated by the white and green light that would appear from same. In the sides from this indicate the heart on the left and the cross on the right. No characters, no symbols would be about either of these. This would rather be indicated in the activities as experienced by the entity through that Egyptian sojourn, indicating the entrance, the activity, and that attainment in the sacrifice and in the temple service. The third of the series, depicting Egypt, is the only one devoid of astrological signs, but the heart on the left is said to be the manner, and the cross on the right the attainment. It would seem that in this period the entity, by entering with a universal love, attained mastery. A life reading of Edgar Cayce tells that he was a priest, a spiritual leader, in prehistoric Egypt. In the aura chart this is suggested by the man with the staff in his hand, leading a group of people. The 2 temples mentioned are described in a life reading as having existed in a very early period when individuals were trained for special mental and spiritual work. The 4th scene indicates that the entity entered that incarnation with love, shown by the sign for Venus, and deep spirituality, shown by the symbol of Pisces. The number 4 ascribed to certain of these zodiacal symbols, applied to their having been brought into the earth plane, symbolized by the number 4. Above this the central figure, also a vignette, would be a series, first, of terraces of rock and the lame man upon same, with the light as from heaven above shining upon the figure, with the raven upon one ledge of the rock and 2 doves together upon another. This should be as a central or larger figure, the center the rock and the man, though the small-sized figure of the man, but indicating the lameness. Upon the left put the sign or symbol of Venus, with Pisces, 4 black-faced, about same. Upon the right side put Uranus, part gold, part green, the gold the upper portion. About same would be the symbol of Libra, 4 in number. These would indicate the place of activity, and the manner in which there was the activity in the experience. This frame of symbols shows a lame man, but the locale is not given. The life reading suggests that it might be his Persian incarnation. The symbols indicating attainment, on the right, are Uranus with 4 signs of Libra. Uranus is the planet of extremes, while the sign Libra is indicative of balance. The combination of these 2 might underline a problem, tendencies in the person toward extremes, yet an accompanying spiritual desire to find balance. Life reading 2948 states that his Persian incarnation was an exceptionally important one, for in it he first developed psychic ability. The lame man in the aura chart was a reminder. At that time, as a leader named Ujid, Mr. Cayce was badly injured in a raid. To obtain relief from his great pain, he succeeded in releasing himself from his body. Reading 29419 describes this Persian incarnation as exerting the greatest force on Edgar Cayce's present life. It also states that because of that psychic development he was bringing the greater development in the present plane, as well as often the greatest worries and troubles. The fifth incarnation pictured indicates influences from Mercury and Leo, Mercury representing the mind, both finite and infinite, and Leo showing leadership, but also the heart. The combination suggests a happy union. The ship, etc., in the middle of this series depicts a life in Laodicea. The attainments on the right are Mars and Aries. Mars means dynamic energy and Aries, leadership, dominated usually by the mind. Above this, in the central portion to the left side put a ship or boat, with a very small mast, with at least 3 people in same, one a man of middle age, one a younger man, and a girl. Indicate them, by their dress, as Orientals. Upon the right side of this, in the center, put the anchor, this not too large yet balancing with the figure of the ship, and the cross still to the left. The cross would be in gold, while the anchor would be in steel gray edged with the lighter gray, with sufficient rope or cord to seam to make a balanced figure. This would indicate a period of the entity's activity, and of being anchored in the cross, through that period in Laodicea. In the left hand put the symbol of Mercury, and about same the symbols of Leo. In the right hand put the symbol of Mars, and about same the symbols of Aries. Reading 294-192 discusses the life in Laodicea in detail. At that time he was known as Lucius of Cyrene, a soldier of fortune in and about Jerusalem and Galilee during the time of the ministry of Jesus. Much impressed by the happenings after the crucifixion, he rededicated his life, determining to be more closely associated with the disciples rather than a hanger-on, as he had been during the lifetime of Jesus. Following this decision, he returned to his own land to establish a church there. In later years he was a counselor, and what we might call a bishop in that church. The reading adds that during this incarnation he learned the humility which was evident in his life as Edgar Cayce. The life reading explains that knowing our past influential incarnations helps us understand what we are meeting today. Each entity grows or applies, or is meeting self in the varied experiences, as the tenets of an individual experience are applied in this present sojourn or activity. This life in Laodicea was included in the aura chart as a reminder that he again had the opportunity to become an influence and a power for good. The last incarnation shown is the one in which the entity was known as Bainbridge. Neptune and Gemini on the left represent the tremendous potential with which he entered. Neptune indicates the possibility of psychic development and great spirituality. Gemini is essentially mental, but because it is a dual sign it is also characterized by indecision, as well as restlessness. The state of consciousness represented by Earth and Libra implies that it was necessary for the entity to return again to the Earth to learn balance. The figure above this would be a small ship, rowboat. This, however, would be upon the right side. The central figure would be a brothel, or as of a counter over which drink is dispensed, and the crowd about same, the dancing girl also indicated in the central figure. And to the left would be indicated the river in which there is the destruction of the raft when crossing is attempted. Upon the left side here put Neptune as the symbol, with the symbols of Gemini about the same. Upon the right put the Earth sign, with the symbols about same of Libra. All these symbols would be in black, but small. Life readings 2948 and 29419 tell that Bainbridge was an adventurer, a British soldier, who drifted to America. There he lost his life when he attempted to cross the Ohio River at the outset of a battle. In the aura chart, the small ship points to the adventurous characteristic of the man, the bar is a reminder that he was a wastrel, and the raft shows the manner in which his life was lost. The entity lost itself and its development in the Earth's plane, for it became a wanderer in the land. While contacting many peoples, yet many people suffered in the wake of the individual. Hence the early return to the Earth's plane and the wanderings to and fro through many of the scenes that the entity experienced at that time. Edgar Cayce's ability to notice detail and to follow instructions, as given from other minds or sources of information, is traced to this life as Bainbridge, who had been trained as a soldier. Each of these lives, and the lessons to be learned from them, had been described previously in his life readings. The final section of the aura chart reading relates neither to the next life nor the final life, but suggests the goal possible to him. As to the attaining of the entity, in the top put the all-seeing eye, the singleness, the eye, this rather large but balanced with the rest of the design or chart. The clouds would be about same in pink or purple, the blue and green, all indicated in the lights as from the cloud, with the cross, and this leaning just a bit towards the right. Here, under same put the small white star. In the edge of the clouds, extending below the eye, put the gold 8-pointed star. These are the symbols, this is the aura chart, of this entity Edgar Cayce. This is not the only instance when this ideal was held before Edgar Cayce, the readings often so admonished him. In 29419 the ideal was put before him in words rather than symbols. Keep the spiritual forces ever magnified, in action, deed, and in truth. For, in the Earth's plane, every element of the physical or mental, or spiritual nature, is judged by the relation to spiritual forces. Then, use those forces as are in hand and magnify his name through the world, for in so doing the entity will save self and others. For as destructive forces have entered into the entity's physical sojourns, so must the rebuilding, resuscitating, re-establishing, reincarnated forces of the entity be manifest in the present. The astrological symbols are replete with meaning, and other students might find varied or additional interpretations.